Welcome back. Now, he's previously stated he's ready to go to jail. Now he wants the pending imprisonment ruling rescinded. Former President Jacob Zuma has approached the Constitutional Court on an urgent basis. He wants it to overturn its ruling. Zuma was sentenced to 15 months in jail for contempt of court. That's after he defied the Apex Court's judgment ordering him to continue his testimony at the Zondo Commission. Zuma also wants the court to stop the police minister and the National Police Commissioner from implementing the ruling. Political Analyst Mcebisi Ndletyana joins us now live. Thank you very much, sir, for your time. Now, I think a lot of people are not sure whether this is, another delay tactic by the former president. I mean, for instance, one of his reasons for this application is Rule 42 and Rule 29 of the court, which talks about a person not being present in court when a decision is taken. But he decided not to appear before the Apex Court.
Well, if it is a delay tactic, then it will not succeed because all these things have to happen within the next few days. He has to submit his application to the Constitutional Court. I'm sure he has done that already. And he also has to appeal to the High Court in Durban, which I'm sure he has. And so these things must reach finality because within the next few days, because he has to hand himself over tomorrow, and if not, the police have 3 days within which to arrest him. So it's not a delaying tactic. So now, coming to the merits of the case, I've gone through this affidavit. It's quite difficult to see how the court will agree with him. That is withdrawing their verdict, because in doing so, then they would have to concede that they have made certain errors. And it's not really clear how they have, or if there are any errors that they've made. Because, for instance, some of the things that Mr. Zuma alleges is that he says he never refused to appear before the commission, which we know is false. That he, at one point when he left the commission, it was because he thought he could just leave. And in any case, he had to take medication. That is why he decided to leave. So there are a whole lot of falsehoods that are contained in this affidavit. And there's a little bit of contempt as well, still, against the Constitutional Court. For instance, one of the things he says is that him going to prison will not serve any constitutional value, but would be a vengeful act to please his political animals. So, which basically means that the Constitutional Court is party to some vengeance against it. Things like that. So if you are making an appeal, you have to base that appeal on merit, on factual grounds, and not insult the person that you are trying to appeal to.
And I mean, this is not the first time that he sort of, and I'll use the word that you used, that he insults the Constitutional Court or the judiciary as a whole. I mean, he had a chance to put these arguments forward. For instance, in his court papers, he says that he was awaiting, his application for the relook of the Deputy Chief Justice to recuse himself from the commission. He could have argued that at the Apex Court, but he decided not to file his papers and instead sent him a 21-page letter still saying that the judicial system has now become part of political battles.
Well, it is also questionable, Masego, whether that was a formal submission to the court, because that was actually one of the letters that his foundation circulated around. So when he was asked by the court, for instance, to make submissions on certain things, for instance, in mitigation of sentence, which he says he was never given, he chose not to, and instead made political statements, which is what Justice Kampembe says. He made political statements making inflammatory remarks against the court instead of making proper submissions to argue the case in his favor, to persuade the court that he was innocent of the charges that he was being accused of. And so these are hence going back to my earlier point that it is difficult to see on what basis the Constitutional Court would agree with him, because quite a large part of the submission is based on lies. And most importantly, this is the thing, and it makes you wonder what is in the minds of those who wrote this affidavit, in that all these incidents have been playing themselves out in public. So there is a record of all these things. So you can't lie about things that can easily be disproved. There is a record to these things. So here is an affidavit that is written as if we have no clue what the real record is. It is based on falsehoods and misstatements and all that. So it is really disturbing that you would have a former president and lawyers helping him, writing something that is completely misguided, really very light, especially given the seriousness of the moment.
And I mean, this is the same person who said that he would rather go to jail. He actually even spoke to a crowd that had been outside the High Court in Pietermaritzburg during his other corruption trial, saying, which means you won't scare me with jail. I've served 10 years before. And now today says, please give me time to plead.
You see, I wrote an article a couple of days ago in the conversation, this online journal, where I was arguing that really Jacob Zuma has no long-term strategy. It's simply someone who is employing all sorts of tactics to avoid going to prison. And part of that tactic is this bravado, this defiance act that he's putting up. And obviously coupled with a populist appeal to portray himself as a victim of judicial vindictiveness. And so he marshals all these things. I mean, he just says whatever comes to mind, depending on where he is. Because there isn't a proper strategy in place, there isn't a proper defense. So what you do, you simply make up a story. And if that story unravels, then you come up with something else. So the point about him not being scared of prison was that, look, you can't threaten me with prison. I'm willing to go to prison. The reason why I'm not coming to you is because I'm raising legitimate questions. All right? So those so-called legitimate questions have been unraveled. They've been proven to be false, and now he's being sent to prison. So the person who says he was never scared of going to prison is now saying, wait, I didn't quite mean that, right? And so here we are, and now the real question of where we are, given the events that have been happening in the last few days around Gandla and Durban, is whether or not our institutions will stand up and uphold a court order.
Now, of course, we know that the former president still does hold a very important position in society. He holds an important position in South African politics. We've seen what's happening now in KZN in terms of his supporters going against COVID-19 regulations, etc. And we've always known that KZN is one of his is one of the provinces that really support the former president. So what does this mean now for the ANC specifically in terms of politics?
Let's start off with the scenes that we have been seeing outside Gandla. The fact that there is a demonstration is not in and of itself surprising, because you have had a militia force that has gathered around him. And these are people who are unhappy due to all sorts of reasons. And they would rather follow him instead of respecting and deferring to our courts. So they have, in keeping with that mentality, they are protesting against this. Then you also have another group of people who have convinced themselves that he's being persecuted because he is Zulu speaking. So there's a politicization of Zulu identity, which has always been part of KZN politics. So this protest, therefore, is not unsurprising. What needs to happen, obviously, is that KZN leaders and other credible leaders who know that this is all false must stand up and in defense of the law to show how false these claims are. And this is where the ANC provincial leadership will be tested. Because they are part of the ruling party, they are part of the NEC that has repeatedly decided that the law must be respected, everyone must appear before the Zondo Commission. So as part of government, they must stand up now in defense of the law against this mob. This is essentially a mob and a militia that is mobilized against the state to delegitimize state institutions. And so in addition to that, you obviously have the law enforcement agencies, especially the Minister Cele and Commissioner of the Police, must enforce the court order. And I must emphasize this point, Masego, that it is not surprising that we are where we are now. Democracies face this kind of test. That there are people, because of their heroic status, they think they should be treated exceptionally, as if they are above the law, which is what Mr. Zuma wants us to believe. Right? We are a constitutional state where equality applies across the board. No one is above the law. And so for the courts then to capitulate, or for Cele or Commissioner of Police not to enforce the court order, it would then mean that we are degenerating into a dictatorial state. It means that our claims to being a democratic state are false. So this is a very important moment, not so much a vendetta against Jacob Zuma, but simply to affirm our democratic credentials. Mr. Zuma, the record is clear. For the last 3-4 years, Mr. Zuma got exactly what he's been wanting. He invited this sentence to him, and those who are complaining now were quiet when he was defying the courts, was a no-show in court at the commission. They were not urging him, they were not telling him to go to court, right? But now they are complaining that the man is old, he should not be sentenced. The fact that you are old does not entitle you to breaking the law. That's the bottom line. There is no persecution. There is no witch hunt here. He's not being persecuted because he's Zulu speaking or whatever. This is a case of someone who broke the law, who thinks that he should be treated differently. So the question is really, are those supporting Mr. Zuma really saying that Jacob Zuma is above the law, that we are not a democracy? That's the question. And if they think he's above the law, therefore they are clearly wrong. That is something that the rest of our society cannot accept, because we believe that we are all equal. That's the principle we stand for, and that's the principle we must affirm. By any means necessary. It's a principle that we must affirm.
Mr. Ndletyana, I've run out of time, but very quickly, the NEC, or rather the ANC postponing its NEC meeting, did they really have to do that? What does this case and the arrest of the former president have to do with their meeting? Or maybe is it because some of the members want to travel to Nkandla, maybe?
Well, I don't know what the purpose of the meeting was to start with. They probably have their own reasons. But if they think that some of their leaders must go there to attend to this matter, that's fine. But this is not an ANC. It is an ANC matter to some degree because it affects the stability of the country in a way. This is a former president, their own member. However, it is ultimately a law and order matter. It is a matter of state.
All right.
In a constitutional democracy where a court order has been issued. So we expect the state to act. So it's not an ANC matter in that way.
All right. Let me thank you for your time. Political Analyst Mcebisi Ndletyana there for his insight. Now,